I don't know if you guys can hear it, but somebody outside is like blaring Justin Bieber's Mistletoe right now. And honestly, same. Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I have something that I'd like to talk to you about today. Somebody left a comment on one of my recent videos asking me to do a video on the differences, similarities, and intersections between butch women and trans men. And somebody else responded to that and brought up a very painful memory of those early transition days where everybody is just doing everything they can to convince you not to transition. And they said, when I came out, everyone around me was like, isn't being a tomboy enough? The answer to that question is no. Sometimes being a tomboy or a butch lesbian or a butch straight woman even is just not enough, and you have to transition. So in today's video, I'm going to be covering exactly that and talking about why being a tomboy isn't always enough and what differentiates rather a trans man from a butch lesbian or just a masculine presenting straight woman. However, before we get into this video, the time that I'm filming this, it is Friday, December 22nd. So by the time this video will be out, it'll be the day before Christmas Eve. So Christmas Eve, and I wanted to wish you guys a Merry Christmas Eve / Merry Christmas Eve / Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, whatever it is that you celebrate. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending your early holiday days with me on my YouTube channel. That really means a lot to me. So masculinity in and of itself, as well as femininity and just, gender as a whole, is a very difficult topic to pin down, especially in today's social climate. It's not an easy thing to define masculinity. A lot of people's definitions of it vary. There's a lot of societal and cultural nuances that go into the definition of masculinities. But I think as a general whole, most people would agree that masculinity does not only refer to people who are male-bodied and have like some sort of specific personality type. Basically, what I'm trying to say is the definitions of masculinity are much clearer in theory than they are in practice. Please just keep in mind that this video is my personal opinion. I've done research on this topic and I formulated my own opinions based off of my own research. So take everything I say in this video with a grain of salt. If you have a differing opinion, that's awesome. I would love to hear about it in the comments down below. So speaking personally from my experience as a trans man, I can definitely say that despite not being assigned male at birth, despite not being born in a male body, being born as a cis man, and also despite the fact that I was not brought up, raised, or socialized as a boy, I never experienced boyhood, you need to understand that trans men's masculinity and trans men's sense of manhood are very similar to the way that cis men understand their own masculinity and their own manhood. There are studies out there that show that both trans men and trans women have similar gray matter in their brain as their cis counterparts do. So that's something to keep in mind when you're thinking about a trans man's sense of their own masculinity versus a butch lesbian sense of masculinity or a masculine presenting straight woman's sense of masculinity. It's like I said, this is a very nuanced conversation. There's lots of things that could go into this, but the most noticeable difference, the most like glaringly obvious difference between trans men and any other sort of masculine identifying person besides cis men is that trans men are men. That is quite literally the bottom line. Trans men want to be men. Trans men are actively pursuing a medical transition, not in all cases, but in most cases, at the very minimum, they are actively pursuing either a medical or a social transition to be perceived as a man. They do not just want to appear masculine, they want to appear and pass as a cis man. So like I said, they're undergoing hormone replacement therapy, they're getting top surgery, they're getting bottom surgery, they experience gender dysphoria. Butch lesbians, and again, this is simply my opinion, this is based off of my own research, based on my own personal life experiences, ultimately want to be recognized by other lesbians as a masculine lesbian. Imagine a scenario where you have a trans man and a butch lesbian in a room together. The trans man is misgendered. They're called a woman, they're called she, they're called ma'am, whatever. The trans man, speaking from personal experience, will be upset about this. They will obviously make it a point to prove to that other person or to correct the person misgendering them that they are not a woman, they are a man. Now, the butch lesbian is misgendered. The butch lesbian is mistaken for a man. The butch lesbian is called sir, what have you. The butch lesbian in this scenario is not going to have such a visceral reaction towards being misgendered. In my experience, at least, butch lesbians or tomboys, what have you, are not insecure in the fact that they are a woman. And so being mistaken for a man does not threaten them. It doesn't threaten their sense of identity like it would for a trans man, and at least in my experience. As I was saying earlier, trans men suffer from dysphoria, and a lot of that has to do with kind of like fussing over and obsessing over the really minute details that go into being perceived and passing as a cis man. For example, a lot of trans guys that I've spoken to have height dysphoria. They think that they're too short to be a real man. I've spoken to guys who have dysphoria about their hand size. They say that their hands are too small and too feminine looking, so that they feel like when people see their hands, they get clocked as a biological female. Trans men obsess over such tiny, tiny details because in our head, that tiny detail is the difference between getting seen as man enough or as a real man versus being misgendered, being clocked as a biological female, and so on and so forth. I don't want to say that trans men weaponize masculinity, because I don't think that's true. I think trans men are utilizing masculinity as a way to blend in. From what I've heard and from my own personal experiences, I don't believe that masculine women or butch lesbians are using masculinity as a way to kind of worm their way into a cis man's inner circle. They're not using masculinity to, get in with the cool guys at the local fucking bar on the corner. No, they're using masculinity as a way to attract other lesbians. In a lot of the research that I was reading, these butch lesbians and these masculine women were describing themselves as a woman who is masculine in as many ways as possible, or they were describing themselves as a woman who simply embraces masculinity. So it's not as if they're using it in order to be manly or become a man or fit in with other men the way that a trans man would use masculinity. Another thing that I've noticed is that trans men have a much stronger connection to the gender binary than butch lesbians or masculine women have. The majority of trans men out there will tell you straight up that they are a man. Their gender is very much on the masculine side of the gender binary. I was going to say left or right, but depending on which way you're looking at the binary, I guess we're going to say it's very much they're leaning hard on the masculine side of everything. They are a man. There is not a whole lot of variability in how they see their gender. And like I said before, this is not the case for all trans men, okay? But just for the sake of this video, for the sake of clarity, we're going to assume that that is the case, okay? Whereas a butch lesbian may have a more fluid gender identity. There are a lot of butch lesbians out there that say butch is their gender. You have a lot of non-binary lesbians out there who present more butch, but they do not identify as butch. This is something that is very dependent on an individual's own ideas and opinions on gender ideology, gender identities, and things like that. However, speaking for myself as a trans man and speaking for other trans men as well, I can definitely say that if you were to ask a trans man why he wants to present masculine, why he wants to have top surgery, why he wants to dress masculine, act masculine, yada yada, it's because he wants to be a man. Whereas if you ask a butch lesbian that, she's not going to tell you most of the time that she wants to be a man. She's just butch. If you're coming out as a trans man to somebody and they look at you and they say, isn't being a tomboy enough? Why can't you just be a butch lesbian? The point is, I'm a man. I'm not a woman trying to be masculine. I'm a man trying to make my outsides match my insides. If you guys have any sort of differing opinions or any other personal experiences where you can add on to this video, you're more than welcome to leave them in my comment section down below. I would love to read them and I would love to talk to you guys about this. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, happy holidays. I will see y'all in the next video.